Robbert and I are here to give you a bit of a sneak peek into our recommender system at the NPO. So who are we? Robbert is currently doing his master thesis of the University of Amsterdam with us, and I'm a data scientist with the NPO with a background in hydrogeology, but I sort of rediscovered a passion for coding after a failed introduction with Fortran. So the NPO, or the Dutch Public Broadcasting Organization, we're basically an overarching body of these different broadcasters who make their own content, and the content that they make often comes from a particular, I guess, point of view, you could say. Some of the broadcasters are they originated or rooted in maybe a history in religion, religious point of view, or BNN is very young and hip and trending, I guess you could say. So all these different broadcasters, they all have their own point of view, and the kind of content they make, they will fit with that. And the NPO sort of stands above it and tries to bring them all together and get them to you, to the public. So the mission of the NPO, this is actually quite important, and it links to other presentations we heard today as well, is that we want to connect and enrich the audience, the public, with programs that do inform, inspire, but they can also amuse a little bit. Sometimes you just want to sit on the couch and be amused. So we're part of the marketing intelligence team at the NPO. And we have a few roles within the organization. We're actually quite young, and we're still growing and discovering, which is really cool. So we basically get all the data from the users, events we get from the website and the apps. We have a little JavaScript tag running there. We get this in, it runs through the whole data flow. I won't bother you with that right now. And I'll focus on the NPO side of things, not the NOS side of things. So we make sure that the data is properly stored, that we can access it, that we can play around with it. And when we play around with it, we try to develop a recommendation system or an engine. We also offer insights for our internal stakeholders through some dashboarding and making the data available to everyone. And sometimes people just knock on our door and say, can you help us with this? And if the data can assist with it, we're happy to help. And I think it's very important for the NPO to move more towards a data-driven organization, I guess. Some quick figures. We have roughly 40,000 unique daily users distributed over both the app and the site. You can see that the site is still dominating a little bit. So we have a lot of content. We have all these broadcasters that make their episodes, their afleveringen. And we have about, well, more than 800,000 of them. It's quite a bit. But these are distributed over just over 6,500 series. So you probably can imagine a Netflix version where one series has a lot of episodes. The same obviously goes for the NPO. Sometimes there is not a series and it's a standalone episode, that's possible as well. And we roughly have 23 terabytes of data, of these event data. So somebody plays a stream or pauses it or goes to another one, clicks on a recommendation. You know the drill. It's not very visible on this one because the NPO style is a little bit dark, so I'll point it out on here. I'm actually watching an episode of POW here. I've pressed pause and then 3 recommendations pop up on the screen. These actually go below each other. And if you scroll down on the side, you'll see another panel here which says Bekijk ook, so you could also watch, and that's filled with recommendations as well. So those are the 2 endpoints that we sort of cater to with our recommendation engine. So what's it based on? Well, we have people watching content. We can register that based on on the cookie on their unique browser or app. So somebody watches an episode of this and also of this. Somebody else does something else with different series, and you get this whole bunch of people that make these links between items. A new user pops up. He's watching something, a certain item. What item is very similar to it? What you might want to watch? that's what we recommend. There's a little difference though in our approach because we are a little bit limited by our computing power, so we have to be smart about it. Because we have so many episodes and there are so many links between them, we decided to take it one level higher, and we base our recommendations on a series level. So the episode is what you're actually watching. Sometimes an episode belongs to a season, and a season can belong to a series. So if you see something like this, what we're actually doing, customers who bought fruit also bought vegetables or dairy instead of actually naming the product or the series. So we take it one level higher to be able to handle it, I guess. A quick run through the workflow. So we determine what user watches which content together with what other content. So if there's a single user that watches a single stream, they don't contribute to our algorithm, I'm sorry. And we do want to make sure that when somebody watches something, that they actually watch it. So if you click on something, you skip through it, you think like, nah, it's not for me, I throw it away, or I'm going to watch something else, then we don't consider that that's a good indication to belong or link to another content. And we don't want to reinforce ourselves, so every time somebody watches something that is a recommendation, we don't want to take that into account either, so we don't reinforce ourselves. What we then do is per series, we go and look at what might be interesting episodes belonging to that series. So that could be the first episode of the most recent season, it could be the most recent episode in general, or it could be a very popular episode of a certain series. And I've put down some, the episode, how do you say it? Codes won't mean much to you, but sometimes you see that the most recent one is the most popular. Sometimes that's not the case, maybe when they just came online, or maybe the episode of today of David a Day, the world keeps turning. Today doesn't have a very interesting guest, but yesterday they had a fight going on at the table, and everyone wants to watch it. So, so we select those series, those episodes for every series. Then we also classify the series. So you can imagine that there, if you watch a series that's very linear, you watch episode 1. There's a cliffhanger at the end of the episode. You want to watch 2, and it's a continuous storyline, or then you don't want to be recommended the most recent episode. It doesn't make sense. So then you want to start probably at the first episode. But there are also things that are more actual, as for example David a Day, where you probably don't want to watch something that happened 3 weeks ago. And it's more interesting to take the one that happened today or yesterday, or the most popular one. So we make these fractions based on how people watch a series, based on their episodes, and then we give them a little label based on those fractions. You see that they don't always add up to 1, because sometimes the next episode can be the last fraction. Sometimes people do skip through series. So this is a little bit arbitrary, but seems to work quite well. What we then do based on this classification of the series, we make per series, we make a recommendation list of 100 ranked recommendations that we write to a database, and whenever you watch something online, you can make an API call, or the browser will do that for you, which then links to the database, and we have these sets of recommendations ready. But sometimes there might not be any links between them. Something just came online, or is a standalone episode that doesn't belong to a series. We do have those instances. So if that doesn't happen, we can either look at something that belongs to the same broadcaster. And so if we don't have 100 yet, we fill it with that. And if that doesn't even happen, we just take the most popular content as a, I guess, as a last resort. We update this every hour. It also looks a little bit into the future. So sometimes the metadata says this stream will become available in half an hour, in an hour, we expect it to be. Then we do take it into our workflow. So we do have something ready. And we're playing around with some randomization to force you to be able to go deeper into that list of 100 recommendations. That can also be done on the API side, which we want to move more towards because it gives us more flexibility. We also experiment with different recommendation tables. So we do calculate these sets of recommendations, write them to a database, but we can write different tables. And then we can tweak it by doing experiments. So you might get one from table A and the other one might get one from table B, and how do they differ? We're just transitioning to a different visualization. So I plotted this earlier today, but it doesn't show everything yet. But this is the click-through rate, which is a pretty basic metric, which usually floats around 5, 6, 7, 8%. Depends on the time of day, those kind of things. And what we have here is the base version, which is basically the one that I explained earlier. We can also, the TS row is an algorithm that sort of caps heavy users. So if there's somebody here that watches everything, we don't want them to have too much of an impact on the connections we put between episodes. So we kept that. Or we weight it by saying if one user watches only 2 series together, but he watches it a lot, we give it extra weight because that means those 2 are really well fitted together. And that last one tends to do it just a little bit better. You can't really pick the significance from this graph. I'm sorry for that, but it appears to do that. Something else we look at, so not only the click-through rate, because we don't just want to keep people on our website, we want to inform them, we want to show them something that they're maybe not familiar with, give them a different point of view, those kind of things. But we also want to make sure that what we do recommend, that they actually like it, so will they keep watching it. So this is a bit of an older graph of the base algorithm. About 0.8% of the people that actually do recommend it loads the stream. So we do already lose quite a bit of people there. It might be because they accidentally paused it and clicked it and, oh no, I want to go back, something like that. There's not much you can do about it. Then the stream starts, it's less, and then obviously even less people complete it. In a perfect world, this one would be similar to, would be up here, or even better, would be up here. We had a bit of a data problem here. Don't worry about it. So there, obviously, it's still maybe quite a basic approach, especially what we heard what the guys at Blender are doing. So what kind of future improvements do we see? Actually, quite a bit. Currently, we're implementing something that if you're watching youth content, that we can only recommend you other youth content. This is basically to protect the little ones, I guess, from content that might be a bit too obscene for them. We're currently doing it on a series-based level. Obviously, it would be really cool to go to an episode-based level and make more direct links between episodes that we lose when zooming out and doing it at the series level. And so we're doing it on an item base now as well, but there's no content involved. So we don't see if at DVD Day if they're talking about a certain subject. If there's a certain subject somebody's talking about and there's a documentary that fits it, that would be really cool. We miss that now, we lose that, which is a shame. We're about to launch a new platform where this will be incorporated, and then we'll start to include personal recommendations. So people are, we would love it if people make a profile so we can play around with that data and incorporate that as well. That's definitely on the future, and that'll be big for us. We'd love to pimp the metadata of the streams, which is currently quite basic. There might be a genre in there, a broadcaster, things like that. But it's also often lacking, which makes it difficult for us. an easier implementation of the A/B testing. It's not very interesting for now, and we would love to incorporate the tag in more websites and apps that are part of the NPO landscape. And we do see that segments, we lose them now as well. It's a part of the metadata problem, but we do think that it's very important, especially to target the younger generation who might not have the concentration span of the older generation. I think there we can win a lot there. And I built a nice bridge here for Robbert. I think it's very important to honor our mission to include more pluriform or diverse recommendations, especially to I guess tickle people to watch something out of their comfort zone, out of their broadcaster zone maybe. And we have implemented something recently that it's the Botte-Bell, so the blunt X method. And what we do, we have this list of recommendations, and we just say, okay, it can't be from the same broadcaster, because that's probably a bit of natural clustering there already. And it can't be of the same genre. What is left? And that's what we implement now. Yeah, it's
really terrible.
Yeah. It's the blunt X method. Just to give a bit of a baseline for Robbert, and he'll talk to you about now how he would like to, or what his research is focused on. So yeah, I guess I'll give it to you.
Thank you. Yes, so as Barend already said, we want to diversify recommendations, which seems to be a really common topic in this meetup. But why do we want to do this? First of all, yeah, I'll put it on. Is it okay if I put it down? Will it work? Yeah, I guess I can. Right. So, a high similarity between items may be not as good as you'd want it to be. Recommendations may be too obvious if items are too similar to each other. You can imagine if you watch Star Wars and you get all the other Star Wars episodes recommended, you say, yeah, duh. But also the complexity of a user's need is not taken into account because a user may not only like Star Wars, but may also like other sci-fi movies or whatever. But not only that, from a user perspective, it might be better. Also, as Barend already said, the goal of a public broadcast is not just to entertain people. It is also to educate, extend potential areas of interest, and inform in a balanced way. And I think this balanced way is obtained through more diverse recommendations. Right, so my first idea when I got this problem was using the graph theory. Basically, we can make a graph out of this recommendation system by connecting elements that a single user has watched. So every node is one item, and every node has a connection if one user has watched two streams. But then we get the problem of we don't want to recommend the most diverse items, because if you recommend stuff that is just the complete opposite of what you're expecting out of a similarity score, then it doesn't work, simply. And also, what do we make of such a similarity graph that is so dense and so unclustered together? I mean, this is basically data from the last week. I have to say this is on an episode level, so not on a series level as we talked before. So every dot here is a series, and you can't even make up the connections here because there are just too many. But this is where community detection comes in. We can basically define clusters of densely connected elements. How do we do this? We use Louvain method. It's commonly used on social networks, but it's also pretty usable in an item-based graph. What it does is, first it assigns a community or a cluster to every node separately, and then it starts joining nodes together in the same community. It all does this based on a metric called modularity, which is basically the amount of links inside a cluster opposed to the amount of links outside a cluster. Does this in the first pass, then it aggregates the entire communities into one node, and it tries again until the optimal modularity is reached. So with a little bit of extra styling, you get to see a bit of more a clustered result. I mean, now we can say, okay, so apparently these are all very similar, and these are also apparently very similar to each other. Yeah, so how do we diversify the recommendations now based on this graph? Because you can just pick one at random from another cluster, but that won't work as well either. So let's explore the border. This is right between the light blue and the purple clusters. And as you can, the Dutch viewers may notice that the light blue is really the youth programs, Pangas, Brugglas, and etc. And it's really separate from the other clusters, which was nice to see. It actually worked, right? So how can we recommend items right now? We basically do re-ranking. Now that we have a label of cluster with every element, for every episode, we can say, okay, so our recommender based on similarity scores the rank in this way. But you can see we only serve out the top 3. So in this case, there would be no diversity at all. If we re-rank it and say we grab the first recommendation from another cluster, you can see that, yeah, naturally there's diversification taking place. So this is basically my whole thesis in a nutshell. Not to simplify things, but all right. So we start out with users. Users interact with our database daily, or actually every minute, and it all adds to a slice of data that we take, a temporal data, of 7 days for this experiment. So based on 7 days, we can make a similarity graph as we've seen before. Then we can compute the communities out of this. We can reassign membership to all the episodes and serve out recommendations. And the beauty of this system is that if you keep updating it daily, while users interact with recommendations or other streams, it will take this into account with the new temporal data and provide a feedback loop, as we spoke earlier. So basically, it not only is diversifying right now, but it should continue to diversify. This is where I'm at right now. I'm implementing it, testing it live. It's coming hopefully this week. So yeah, that's basically the end of my talk here. We're measuring it through A/B testing with the blunt aches method or whatever we called it, because we expect this method to be a lot better. Yeah, that's it for now. Are there any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Really great to see NPO investing in diversification, and it's nice to see your work in this area. Do you have an intuition whether it's equally beneficial for all users? Or to put it differently, do you plan to look at for which users, which content is beneficial?
Yes.
Because depending on how divergent it is from, is it really on the border or is it maybe quite distant from the place?
I get what you mean. So the problem here is that we don't do this on a user-based level. So we can't say, okay, this user has watched this many streams from cluster A and this many from cluster B, and so it apparently likes this as much as that. So you know, I would love to implement this, but it's just technically impossible right now. It will be very soon, but I guess I'll have to extend my thesis for that part. Yeah, maybe. Thank you. Yes.
You also include data from critics and so on. Of course, a lot of knowledge is known about TV series and programs also in advance. So I can imagine that from newspapers and other sites there's a recommendation for a certain TV program or series?
We didn't do it, or I didn't do it right now, but it's a good idea actually. But no, I didn't do it right now. That's.
Let's say the typical content you have is long-form content, so between 30 and 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And then if you look at how long people watch it, it's actually quite low. You now have also on your side something, this short form content with this kijk tips, this smaller. Is this also something where you can put this more recommendation knowledge in? Because for this form of content, and this form of user behavior, I can imagine recommendation can be much more interesting for the user.
Yeah, it would be great if you're watching something on a specific subject, and we take a fragment of a different talk show where somebody opposes the view in 5 minutes, and you don't have to watch the whole hour.
And this is actually what you do?
No, but that's something we would love to do. Yeah. So include smaller fragments into the whole recommendation engine is great. We are currently dealing with the technicalities of it because they belong on the metadata level to the same episode, and it gets.
Yeah, I would remember actually using it, and you also have it, I think, in the mobile app or somewhere, and it's actually it's great.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
So 2 more questions and then we have to wrap up. So first you.
Yeah. So I saw that you want to move from an item-based recommendation to an item plus content-based recommendation. Can you elaborate a bit on that? Because as far as I know, for every program that is produced for NOS, there is, for instance, the subtitling for the people who are hard of hearing.
Yeah.
So that's one of the sources that you could mine very well to align the topics, rather than just the items.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of things that we would love to include. Yeah. And subtitling would make total sense, especially because the density of content that we do subtitle, I think from the top of my head, legally we're required to put it at 98 or 99%? 99. So, perfect. Yeah.
Is it fair to say that your recommendation system is designed because of the lack of metadata, and then who is responsible for delivering the metadata? Because if you had more information, say plot line, actors, whatever, it's going to make it much richer.
Yeah, this is I guess one of the challenges of operating in the Hilversum media landscape with all these different broadcasters. With everyone has their own priorities. So I guess the requirements for filling in and delivering the metadata are quite high level or low resolution. So for us it would be great to get much more detail in there to play around with, to incorporate. Yeah.
Do you generate metadata from subtitles?
Yeah.
So I think we have to leave it at that to leave some time for James and talking